Oh, I don't even know. As soon as it's over. Yeah. Well, it's one of the. I know, I heard the word, I already brought her, I did it. You ready for it? You're ready. Call me to order, we'll have Caitlin call roll.
David Jones.
Here.
John Edwards.
Here.
Diane Munns. Here. Suzanne Cooper. Here. Tom Coe.
I'm serving as alternate, Brian Berger.
Jim Anderson.
Present.
Mayor Tom Phillips.
Here.
Jeff Walters. Chelsea Huseman. John McHugh.
Here.
Carol Freeman.
Here.
Mayor Portman Clark. Brad Dees. Jody Smith.
Here.
Dan Lovett.
Here.
We have a quorum. The agenda was distributed. Are there any additions, modifications, to the agenda that's distributed? I move approval. Motion by Clyde, second by Grimes, to approve the agenda as drafted. Ready to vote? And as we've done in the past, we'll have verbal votes, but anybody can ask for a roll call vote on any matter at any time. So all those in favor of approving the agenda as distributed, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Those opposed? Agenda is approved. Now it's time and place for anybody that would like to address the CIWW board and any item. Seeing or hearing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda, which is items 5 through A through G. I call particular attention to item G, which changes our November meeting date from the 4th Wednesday up to the 3rd Wednesday. To make sure that we have a quorum, et cetera, the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So I don't have anything to do, any comments on any of the agenda items, consent agenda items? I move approval. Second. 5 and Norwalk, motion second. Discussion on consent agenda. Hearing none, all those in favor of consent agenda 5A through 5G would indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The consent agenda is approved. Item 6A is the Sailor Road legal recommendation to intervene. Rick, you're in the room. Are you going to speak on behalf, or is Bill going to speak on that?
I think I can speak to it very briefly. The Des Moines Waterworks currently has an asset in the Saylorville storage capacity that is to be transferred to the Central Iowa Waterworks as of operational commencement. That asset may be affected by a pending application for hydroelectric power installation at that facility. In order for us to keep an eye on that, it is recommended that the Central Iowa Waterworks intervene in that proceeding to have a seat at the table. At this point, it's kind of a open-ended question. We'll have any concern or interest, but we want to keep our options open. And so we're asking for approval to be in that proceeding on behalf of it in the name of Central Iowa Waterworks. I understand the Des Moines Waterworks considered the matter last night, and I expect it approved intervention in the name of the waterworks. And so what we would do is enter an appearance and intervention in that. All interests are protected to the extent needed.
Questions of Rick? To approve. There's a motion by Clyde to approve the intervention.
Second.
Seconded by Anthony. Is there anything else on the presentation? I know that there's a background and Kyle or Ben, anything else that you'd like to share?
I would like to share, Mr. Chairman, if I could, just a little background for the sake of those who will know why this is important. Central Iowa Waterworks, and as Rick mentioned, this ownership of storage in Saylorville Reservoir that Des Moines Waterworks currently owns is going to transfer to Central Iowa Waterworks. Des Moines Waterworks entered into this agreement in 1982. It's actually a pair of between the Corps of Engineers and the state. Second agreement then, kind of subsequent to that, was between the state and Des Moines Waterworks. And we've actually received about 12.5% of the storage in Saylorville Reservoir is owned by Des Moines Waterworks and will be transferred to Central Iowa Waterworks. We paid just over $3 million for that storage, and basically that storage was created by raising the normal pool reservoir by 3 feet. So they raised the pool, that storage was given to the state divided it between Des Moines Waterworks and Iowa Interstate Power. We paid the additional costs. We also have some ongoing costs associated with operation and maintenance of the facilities that it takes to keep Polk City dry. Frankly, there's a station there that makes sure the big creek doesn't control. And every 5 years they recalculate that cost is going to be. Currently, it's about $150,000 that we pay annually for operation and maintenance of that facility. All of those rights and responsibilities will transfer to Central Iowa Waterworks on operational commencement. Now, this is important because during periods of extreme drought, as the lake level drops, it gets to a certain level, the Corps starts reducing the outflow from the reservoir. And if that gets too low, because we own this storage, we can request that they release additional water that then we can use to produce drinking water. So that's why it's important. That's why we want to make sure that if they put hydroelectric power there, they don't interfere with our rights. That's why both Des Moines Waterworks and Central Iowa Waterworks are encouraged to intervene in the process.
Thanks. Any questions of about background? If not, we've got a motion on the floor from Clyde and Anthony. All those in favor of approving the motion to intervene, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion's approved. Item 6B is the resolution on a public information request policy. Particular staff or legal.
I can speak to that issue. We don't, fortunately, as of right now, we don't have any open records requests that have been presented to us, but in anticipation of that, because cities and utilities have been getting lots of those types of requests, we thought it would be a good idea just to go ahead and get that policy in place. So the policy before you today was one that it has been drafted by us, but drafted based on going waterworks policy. We knew that it was up to date, complied with the current law, and feel comfortable recommending that policy that was in your packet with a typo corrected that Jody had caught. But the one that, it was just that we had executor rather than executive and one that got in the policy that has been corrected. So we would recommend approval.
I move to approve. Any questions of any? Now we have a motion to approve on live.
I'll second.
Second by Norwalk. Discussion. All those in favor of the resolution 6B would indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The resolution is approved. Item 6C, maximum amount of the Bankers Trust. I think most of us, since we're public entities, know that we need to have a maximum dollar amount for on deposit any financial institution. Or any questions of Amy on this one? Not entertain a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Clive, second by Anthony. All those in favor of the resolution approving the maximum deposit of Bankers Trust indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Resolution is approved. Recommendations from the committees. First one is the executive committee report on the executive director recruitment search. Bill, are you prepared to speak on that, or would you like somebody else to speak on it?
I'm happy to give you my quick take. The agreement for the executive search firm was approved on June 7th. And I understand you met yesterday to begin the process. The second item is an engagement letter with our bond counsel that was approved on the 14th of June so that work could begin. The third item is an engagement letter, again, as directed by the board a month ago, with special counsel to begin work on the transfer documents for operational readiness for real estate and operating contracts. That was signed on the 14th of June and work is underway. So those three items are reported to you as completing your instructions of a month ago.
Thank you, Bill. You mentioned the meeting yesterday. I had some notes just to update the full board as to how that conversation went. As you recall, Bill sent out a notice of the executive committee meeting, inviting any trustee or any alternate to that meeting. The executive committee and the key stakeholders met with Mark Peterson yesterday over the noon hour. And these are the highlights. There's a goal to have Mr. Peterson will contact each of the trustees and alternates by July 8th. And he'd like to visit with you individually as to what you think what traits, requirements, et cetera, that the group should be searching for in a new executive director. You'll be doing the same thing with the key stakeholders and the technical committee as a whole. And all of that is hoped to be finished by July 8th. After that, the position announcement will be drafted and it will be released to lots of professional organizations that have job boards, et cetera. And that'll be posted on or about July 18th. A draft of a recruitment brochure will be presented and reviewed hopefully by Melissa and Jamie Buell. And that it should be finalized by July 31st, and that'll be the document that goes out to anybody that expresses any interest in the position. Applications will be received up until the end of the business on Friday, August 23rd. The goal then would be the, applications that are received would be reviewed by GovHR internally, and that they would be screened and be again, the initial, checks to make sure that the persons of, met the qualifications that we're looking for. And on September 9th, the executive committee would meet, with Mark Peterson, to review a short list and get it down to 3 or 5. With a, intention that the oral interviews would be at the end of September. And the, offer made the early part of October, with a hiring date or a start date, the end of October or the first part of November. So that's kind of the schematic. Mr. Peterson, very pleasant individual, easy to chat with. All of you will enjoy those conversations. He has a lot of Iowa ties and a lot of Iowa background, even though he spent a super majority of his time in Illinois, and particularly in the city of Normal, Illinois. But he has connections to Ankeny and Coralville. He grew up in Ankeny, graduated from Ankeny, and he correctly went to the University of Iowa. So. Any questions about that outline?
I'll just add one thing, Jody. We talked about compensation during our meeting with him, and we asked him to do some research and to bring back some position ranges that he felt may be comparable. We understand this is a little bit different position, and he understands there won't be actual responsibility for the operations, but managing the contract. But he said he would see what he could do and bring that information back to us. Take a look at that.
Thank you. Further questions? If not, enter a motion to receive and file the report from the executive committee.
So moved.
So motion by Dr. Mike. Second. Second by Clyde. All those in favor of receiving and filing the report from the executive committee indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion's approved. Move on to the finance and audit committee report. We've got basically a couple items to the investment policy, which is included in the packet, and has a designation of the treasurer, and then a couple of other resolutions dealing with reserve fund policy and purchasing and expenditure policy. I don't know about who wants to speak to that, or whether the committee chair. Scott, congratulations on your position as finance committee chair.
Thank you. I can speak to you very quickly. We had good discussion and pretty straightforward, and we presented these approved policy. Can you almost read it?
Investment policy again required by Iowa law. We're not doing any investing at all. Bill or Amy, any additions on the resolution approving the investment policy that you'd like to make?
Not specifically requesting approval for the resolution, but again, just to reiterate what Jody said, that this action for the investment policy is really a twofer, where we're requesting authorization for the policy itself and then a motion to designate a treasurer.
Okay. Let's first take item 1A, the resolution approving the proposed investment policy. Your motion.
So
Motion by Dwight.
Second.
Second by Urbandale. Discussion. All those in favor of indicating of approving the investment policy, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Resolution is approved. 1B is a motion to designate a treasurer to oversee the investment activity, and there's not a recommendation, but I would assume that the logical person was Amy Kaler. So, any issues with that recommendation? Amy? I didn't get a motion by Clyde. Approve Amy Kaler as treasurer, or second? Second by everybody else. She knows. We have a motion and second discussion. All those in favor of designating Amy Kaler as treasurer, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Congratulations, be another title, Amy.
Thank you.
The CIWW Reserve Fund policy was in here, and Matt, you were the primary author of this. Do you want to give us some background?
Yeah, so with the finance committee, we reviewed the CIWW cash reserve policies. The Moody's recommendation, the Moody's criteria, the S&P criteria, the Fitch criteria. And so that was kind of the basis of what we reviewed in the performance policy. The reserve policy was specifically not included in the community, so that the board could decide later. And I think from a practical perspective, you know, establishing reserves is going to serve as kind of a one-time buildup of cash that you're going to see in your water rates as CIWW comes online. So I know that when SCS had modeled things originally, they had established that in year one, which caused a big spike and then down. And so, you know, what we've got in here is establishing a 25%, 25% reserve, which is, you know, depending on the operating budget, maybe something in the neighborhood of $10 to $14 million to essentially sit in the CIWW to provide some liquidity there. But how fast we build that up, I think, is going to be subject to budgets. And so we provided some ability to establish that reserve over a period of time to get there over maybe 4 years. And so that's essentially how the policy is written. But, you know, more to come on how much of that reserve gets established in year one as we consider the first budget. And then year 2, year 3, some on how we perform the budget, you know, and so that's essentially kind of an overview of the policy, but we're recommending 25%. You know, at this time, there's no plans to go out and borrow from the public market. 25% would probably be viewed as too low if you were going, you know, to borrow from the public market, but since there's no plans to do that at this time, I think 25% is sufficient.
Any questions, Matt? What do I have? Second. We've got some feedback. Are you? We're good now. Okay. Thank you. If there's no further questions, we'll have the vote on the resolution approving the reserve fund policy. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? That resolution is approved. And the next one is the resolution approving the interim purchasing and expenditure policy. And Bill, I think that one would be you, if you wouldn't mind.
Yes, indeed. This is to create a purchasing authority for me and for the board clerks for not incidental, but moderate level expenditures so that we don't need to bring them to the board and the officers every time. This will give us a little bit of room to navigate purchasing up to $25,000 per occasion for me and $5,000 for each board clerk on individual items.
Any questions from the board on that? Which went through the finance committee, I know, so.
I might just add, Mr. Chair, that one practice that we have been practicing amongst the board clerks and will continue. There have been some reimbursements to Des Moines Water Works and West Des Moines Water Works. And we've been getting cross approvals. So a Des Moines Water Works board clerk isn't approving an expenditure up to $5,000 for reimbursement to Des Moines Water Works. So there's a return. That's important to know.
Great clarification, thank you.
And can I assume the way we do this in Des Moines is at each board meeting, we have a attachment showing what's been spent under that authority. So we usually do it as part of the consent agenda.
Yeah, that in part of the consent, there was, I think, 4 bills paid in the month of May.
Right, I think that would be available through the disbursement listing that is provided.
In the consent agenda typically.
Right. Further questions?
I move to the resolution.
Motion by Clyde, second by One. Great vote. All those in favor of the interim purchasing and expenditure policy, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? That the resolution is approved. We'll move on to item 8, which is the reports. Bill, we have you down for several reports. You can have the floor.
Well, I'm hoping I'm just going to give mine, but I'm going to wrap around the outline there a little bit. I think it's most important for me to tell the board that our early work, the last 2 months, really, the last 2 board meetings have been startup items, getting the organization on the ground, getting the banking established. The capital contributions have all been sent in now and been processed. Initial insurance coverage, building the outside team of interim counsel and the executive search firm, the bond and the special counsels, getting a number of the initial policies established that you've completed that task just a few minutes ago, getting us registered with the Internal Revenue Service and the payroll accounts and so forth. I'm at a point of being able to tell you that work is largely done, and we are turning our attention to moving ahead towards operational transfers and the operational date of January 1st. There are a number of things that need to be done before that. So the work effort in July will have a few cleanup items on startup item. The website has not launched yet. Progress is being made, and we're probably within a few days or a week or 2 of launching that and having a more finished logo to use in our public presentation. Completing the arrangements to have PFM as the financial advisor, getting an application to IPERS so that IPERS participation can be a part of the compensation going forward, getting administrative support for CIWW that doesn't impose on Des Moines, West Des Moines, and the other member agencies. Then there's some work that is really preparatory to the operational transfers. That's consents from the Corps of Engineers, Department of Natural Resources, and so forth. Those contacts have just been begun. That work will be going forward. Preparing the real estate and the operating agreement contracts. The legal team is beginning that work, has actually begun it, and is moving ahead with that. We will have to prepare budgets for next year and for the interim budget for this year. And build an accounting capability of our own and an audit capability of our own. And settle the question that the finance committee will be discussing about how we will accomplish the billing starting in January. There are options, in the one that I think most of us like is to have Des Moines Waterworks continue doing that, since the meter reads are automatic and go straight to the billing system. It's a strong candidate to continue that in place. There are some other pieces of that need to be looked at, and we should verify that there is no other option that is as good as that. So those are the kinds of projects that we'll be probably taking up in the next month to 2 months, to bring ourselves towards being ready to make the transfers on January 1st and reach operational status.
Any questions for Bill? 1 to 2 weeks, maybe in the,
It won't be finished in 2 months. No, Jody, I'm sure it won't, but that'll be the focus for the next period of time.
Just to clarify, I think we're looking at mid-July. So we weren't gonna be ready July 1st, but we got started about 2 weeks late. I think our hope is to show something at the next board meetings. I think there are some bios and photos still missing, so I'll find those folks.
thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Producer report. Ted, you're our star.
I'll go first. I don't know what star, but I want to start with an update on the nitrate situation. And we had anticipated that if we had a wet year after all of this drought, the nitrates would be a big challenge. Because during the dry years, there's nothing to flush the nitrates out. They kind of bank up on the land. When it rains, tiles run, we're likely to get high nitrates. And I'm here to tell you that the nitrates are not disappointing. Okay? The other thing that's somewhat unusual, and they're hot, okay, compared to historical nitrate concentrations that we've had to deal with. This year will easily be in the top 2 or 3 in terms of average nitrate concentration for the year. So we're dealing with high nitrates. This year also we're dealing with rain and then not rain and then hot and then not as hot. So the rain, the runoff, the tile drainage, the temps, and even algae are all working together to kind of confound this nitrate situation. So just as an example, I sent you an email, all of you, earlier this week and said, you know what, if it doesn't rain, demand is going to go up and nitrates are high enough. Thankfully it rained. So now the nitrates have gone down from surface runoff. There's dilution. And then as soon as the dilution is gone, the nitrates will go up. And then as the water temperature rises, the nitrates will start to go down again. Algae blooms. We will have lower nitrates, and when the tiles run, they'll go up again. And so it's just been this constant, never-ending cycle. It's been very challenging to deal with. So you take all of those variables and then you look at the variability of demand, which is ratcheting up because it's summertime in Iowa. And then when it rains, it drops dramatically. When it starts slowly launching up again, and then it rains and it drops dramatically. All of those variables make it very hard for us to tell you this is the day that this is going to happen. Trying to keep you informed, trying to give you notice. But at some point this summer, we may have to implement our water shortage. And our water storage plan is a little bit misnamed because there's certainly no shortage of water right now. It's just not usable in our treatment process. So maybe it's a maybe we'll implement the water quality or whatever, but we may well get there. Still a chance that rain will be periodic and be beneficial enough that we'll get through this thing, but I just want to make you aware of what that means. We're going to implement our water shortage plan. The first step in the water shortage plan, and I'm going to talk in terms of the water shortage plan and the agreement, even though technically that doesn't go into effect until operational commencement date, but we're going to all need to work together on this, whether it's technically the date we work. The first step that we would implement is just, it would be a voluntary step, asking anyone who's watering their grass to water it half as much. So whether it's half as many days or half as long each time, or the front, not the back, we don't care as long as it's half as much, and that's voluntary. And we have gotten some good uptake on that in the past, and we have asked, and so we would be hopeful that if we got to that stage and we asked that some people would back off, and that would be enough to get us through. If it's not enough, the next step is prohibition of lawn. We have never done that. It's a big step. A lot of people are going to be unhappy with it. It's going to be difficult to enforce. Likely the enforcement will mostly be neighbors, influencing neighbors and customers, influencing business people, and that's likely the enforcement. We don't have plans in Des Moines, at least, to go out and start turning off everyone who's watering, but we're hoping that if we get to that point, people will stop watering their grass and we can get through this thing. If all of that isn't enough, or if it doesn't work, if people aren't responsive, we could violate the nitrate standard, and then what that means is we'll have to do public notice. We'll have to tell people that infants under the age of 6 months should use bottled water. Older children and adults can continue to drink water. Sounds like an impact on a small segment of the population, but everybody perceives that as it's dangerous for everyone. No one should drink the water. We really hope to not get to that point. So we're battling it every day. We read about it every day. We're making the operational folks really nervous by saying, we're not going to do it yet. And I think we'll get through one more day, get through 2 more, we'll get through the weekend. We'll try to keep you posted and well informed, but this could happen very quickly in succession. The nitrate concentrations can vary a lot. Saylorville is notorious for running one nitrate concentration for several days in a row, and then suddenly it changes dramatically. We don't know why. It's dynamics in the reservoir. If they're going up 30 feet over the next couple of weeks, we don't know what to expect. But it could happen very quickly. We have literally prepared the press releases for all 3 of those potentialities, and Melissa is going to share those with all your communications people. If we get there, you'll be the first to know that we're going to need your help to implement this across. It will be, we visited with the executive committee about this. We will issue a press release jointly from Des Moines Waterworks and Central Iowa Waterworks. So it'll be a Central Iowa Waterworks press release, and we're going to list every community that's impacted. I don't know if Brian is on the list, but you're not hooked up yet, so.
I've taken questions about this.
Yeah.
And we have promoted the stuff on our social media channels when it came out last time.
Yeah.
But I've got elected officials that are keyed into this.
Yeah.
We'll do what we can to participate.
And
Because I
frankly,
think that we need to.
yeah, I'm hopeful that can be some solidarity there, but frankly, what we do, it doesn't affect,
Right.
the rest of this, because you're not connected with somebody that will be. So that's a little bit different. And you know that. But anyway, that's the update. Right now, we're in good shape. It's gonna rain again on Friday, so they say. We'll be in good shape for another few days. And we'll keep you posted. Questions on any of that? Any clarification? Sue.
Ted, when you were bringing this on this, and we were talking to the technical committee, we thought it would be good also to make sure everyone knows what that standard is. I mean, we live this every day, but some groups may not know. So if you could tell us what it has been running and what that standard is, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a lot of information that we will not try to share with the public because it's very confusing. But The drinking water standard for nitrate is 10 milligrams per liter. 10 is okay. 11 is not okay. We measured down to the hundreds of apartments. So we've been saying for 30 years that 10 is the standard. But technically, if we measure 10.2, that's not 11. We can measure 10.4, that's not 11. 10 is still okay. We've decided in Des Moines that if it goes over 10, we should just tell people, standard is 10. Today is the day that infants under 6 months should be bottled water. We haven't seen concentrations as high as 18, Raccoon River, 15 on the Des Moines River. Our infiltration gallery today, which is protected from direct river water, but its influence is over 11. So all of our sources are over 10. We're running a nitrate removal facility near capacity. We're recovering from Ankeny's ASR wells, Waukees ASR wells, our ASR wells. We're using water out of Math Reservoir, we're using water out of Crystal Lake. We're maximizing our RO treatment at Sailorville. We're doing everything that we can. And this morning, finished water nitrate was 8.88. So we're not violating.
We've talked about the policy, and the policy goes to, once we get it, then we need to do communication, so we need to make sure that we are coordinated on that communication. The next thing is we ask people to voluntarily reduce, so some do, some don't, that keeps it under. I would like to have some people start the process. So how do we do this in a more systematic way than just asking? Because if people don't do it, then the next step is cutting them off or telling them that they can't irrigate water, but we don't have any enforcement for that. So I would like us to start some data collection on irrigation, looking at it, seeing if there's a way that we could more systematically manage this process as opposed to hoping that this will take care of it and cutting people off without an enforcement mechanism. A couple of years ago, we asked people if they would voluntarily change their irrigation. People, I think they were set up to irrigate on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Our big day was always Monday.
Yeah.
Maximum day of the week was always Monday. And we asked them to stop watering on Monday and switch and do odd. Monday is no longer the peak day. But to Diane's point, we don't know that that's because they all shifted. We just think it's because they shifted.
Yeah, and that's anecdotal, so I would like us to do some work on that. So that we can stay under this standard, that we have a way to deal with it, that's fair to everybody, and maybe we can cooperatively manage this peak that violates when you get into this nitrate, or when we get into a shortage situation, it's all of those things.
Some of the communities in our group have already implemented, rate structures that would discourage over watering, I would say. There are a lot of options. Once we have it. One last thing, if I might, I just want to remind the board that our next tour, our next treatment plant tour will be July 31st. So it's actually after the next board meeting. We're going to tour the Sailorville plant, 3:30 on July 31st. We had a great turnout at the Field Drive plant. And based on the questions, I think folks enjoyed it. So hopefully a bunch of the board can make it to see the Field Drive plant on July 31st at 3:30.
Melissa, will you be sending out the invite?
There is a calendar invitation and some information. I'll send it again after this meeting.
And you are right that, sort of the sewer plant, excellent. Especially the labs, are nice, safe approaches. Any further comments about the producer's report from Ted? Regina, do you have a producer's report?
Just that we continue to try and maximize production on AC Ward and serving areas that we don't typically serve, includes the 2 hospitals in the west, so that takes a bit of coordination on our part with all those clinics and their specialized systems. So I think they're okay now, they're just when we transition back, we'll have to be in touch with them. We are a little hampered, we have 1 deep well out of service because of a variable frequency drive breaking down, so, but we're doing the best we can to support Des Moines and taking less water and less Des Moines. I know a number of other communities are doing what they can as well.
Final questions, comments about producer's report? Technical committee, Kyle?
Yes, those that know me, when I like to talk, I like to provide a few slides. I put a few slides up today to share, to give an update on what the technical committee has been doing in the last several months. Certainly, there's been a lot of heavy lifting by the technical committee, and quite frankly, it's a very exciting time. We're really doing a lot of planning and looking for the future and planning for the next 25 years. And so, an exciting time, but it's certainly a heavy lift for the technical committee. First to start off with our Saylorville treatment plant expansion project. That will consist of probably 6 contracts, and the first contract has been awarded and construction has started. This is a transmission main through the city of Johnston, 36 and 48-inch transmission pipe. The goal is to get this online in that, by a year from now, so that we can utilize the current capacity that's in the Saylorville plant to push water westerly when needed and southerly to buy us some more time as we're expanding the treatment plant. So we bid this out early, currently under construction with tunneling. You can see from the photos, they did have to fight some groundwater and some surface water due to the flooding along Beaver Creek. But construction is progressing nicely and to be completed within a year of now. Next slide, please. The other parts of the contracts, we have been doing RO pilot testing with HDR and our staff. That has been completed. With UF pilot testing is currently under progress. To be completed in the next couple of months. Here's kind of a schedule of the design completion dates to try to get this all wrapped up and have this plant online in 2028, in 4 years. So they're racing to try to get this done. You'll see in some of the other slides, we certainly are going to need the water, and getting this plant completed as quickly as possible will help us with that goal. Next slide. Also that they're doing is the raw water study. We've been working with consultants on that, doing soil testing, hydrologic testing, and looking at the area to figure out where is the best placement for these wells along the Des Moines River and how much yield can we get. The next step is going to be doing some pump tests along there so that we can quantify how much water is available, and again, better define where the wells need to be placed and how many wells we need to reliably be able to produce 20 million gallons per day and have redundancy with that. So that is all in progress. These wells are located on Corps of Engineers land, so we're working closely with the Corps of Engineers to permit these and get that process. So right now we're on schedule to be completed in 4 years. Next slide. Also part of the technical committee, we've been working with HDR on the long range water supply study. That has been going on since late last year, hoping to finish that up by the end of this year. Multiple steps involved with that, but the first step was for each of us in our areas to look at our population and water demands and project that going forward out to 2050. So this is a summary of those projections. You can see from the bar graph of what the projections are, along with industrial demands that may come and the reserve capacity. The dashed line is our current treatment capacity that is available. And so you can see in 2020, we had more treatment capacity than demand, and we had a little buffer on top of that. But by 2030, we could be projected to be short on top of buffer. That does include the Saylorville plant expansion being completed on time. And so even with that expansion, we are short on the buffer capacity. And then from there, you can see if we don't do additional treatment plant expansions or additional treatment plants, then we're going to continue to fall short until we have a heavy lift to do that. So they have been evaluating all the options to look at that. Go to the next slide, please. This just gives you, again, an idea of the shortage. By 2050, we will be 67.5 million gallons short after the Saylorville expansion. So HDR has been reviewing all the previous reports that had been done throughout the metro to evaluate all of those, combine all of those to see what makes best sense for Central Iowa Waterworks. We've had a lot of these preliminary reports have been done and then are making a recommendation. And we came down to 2 recommendations at this point. Again, the study is continuing to go on. Next slide, please. Alternative 1 and alternative 2. The last 2 bullets of each of those alternatives are the same. Being to expand the Grimes water treatment plant to 7 million gallons per day. And then again to 8.5 million gallons per day, and then build a second treatment plant on the Des Moines River next to the Saylorville treatment plant for another 50 million gallons per day. The difference in those 2 is whether or not we build a west water treatment plant farther out west on McMullen, a brand new plant, or if we expand the McMullen water treatment plant that is currently a 25 MGD plant, or going to a 37.5 MGD plant. So we're looking at the modeling, looking at the source water, looking at all the costs to see what makes the most sense and what's most economical for Central Iowa Waterworks to do that. So that'll be part of the recommendations that are coming out with technical committee and HDR and staff. Working diligently to do this planning. And again, a very important document guiding us for the next 25 years. That is my update. Yes.
Hi, we shared some fascinating information yesterday. We're all concerned about the water coming down from up north. And we were talking about Saylorville, how long it's going to take to get here and the impact on Des Moines. Would you mind sharing that? I think that would be of interest.
Sure. Saylorville, so obviously its first purpose of that is flood control. And luckily the reservoir is down. And so we're seeing with the Army Corps is projecting that the reservoir is going to continue to be going up 30 feet over the next 2 weeks. And so I think they're showing not to go peak for over a week or 2 before it peaks. It's anticipated to get near 9 to 10 feet below the emergency spillway. From that, so well below. Again, the higher you get up in the reservoir, the more storage that's available. So the last 10 feet of storage is a lot greater than the first 10 feet of storage. So we're certainly, the city is not in any threat of exceeding that. But it will take, they will release that water over many weeks or months to get it back down to normal pool. So we'll anticipate that could take a couple months before they get it back down to normal pool. The Corps releases the water very steadily. They don't want to drop it too quickly or it can bring slides in the reservoir and erosion in the reservoir. But they're managing that in a way to avoid flooding downstream. But it will, there's a lot of water. Luckily, there's reservoirs there and available to buffer that. And the Corps works closely with us, giving us updates when they do increases in outflows, because it can impact our operations of the wells and river intakes and things like that. Yeah. Yes.
So, have we, and maybe this is a question for Amy, it's probably not for you, Kyle, but any economic analysis on what this expansion will cost and how that will translate into rate? I know you have, I don't, this is a lot of money.
Yeah, in terms of, rates, it's important that we plan for it. It's important that we model for it, with PFM, so that there are no surprises. The cost of the next expansion is estimated to be what,
For the 10 MGD expansion,
not the one that we're currently, not 160 million, but the,
it's,
We had
Next
600.
yeah.
In 2027.
So it is built in.
600 now.
600 is what we had built in.
So we have modeled for it, but it's not cheap.
And I know when we talked about this, when Kyle, every community put in their projections. Based on the population we have now, and this being the water use, this is what it's gonna be. I would like us to start thinking, in addition to the supply, planning to do some demand side planning, and again, say, are there things we can do with data analysis? Are there things that we coming down the pipe on new technology that we might want to incent people to use? Are there some more things that we can do with rates that may send out and signal people where we are? Because this is gonna be really expensive. We don't want to get all of this online and then have people finding those ways to conserve. We'll be sitting there with stranded investment. So I think we probably need to go at this hand in hand on these things. But it's a whole different way of thinking about it, because we've had pretty cheap availability of water in the past. But when you look at this, that's not cheap availability of water.
I know when the 10 MGD in Saylorville was being priced, there was a little, at least I'll speak for myself, a little sticker shock, when those numbers came out. So a lot of volatility in pricing with, post-pandemic and all that. Are we aware of any extremely recent expansions of water facilities and some of that escalation in pricing settling down? Is, like we are seeing in some of our other capital projects? I'm just not as familiar on the new water production facilities. Are we seeing that or not? Or
I'm not
is that
aware.
something we need to look into?
I'm not aware on recent treatment plant projects. I can tell you on our own distribution projects that we've been bidding recently, prices have been coming down below the engineer's estimate finally, sometimes quite a bit. And so I think in talking to contractors, I hear there's not as much work as there was a couple of years ago. In fact, we're looking for work and having to lay off people because there's not as much work. And so I think the economy, the HDR, see if they're familiar with any other big contracts. The treatment plant projects are probably another year out before they go out to bid, and things like that, which maybe will help, but things are right sizing a little bit.
The first transmission project was significantly underestimated, wasn't it? 2 million at least. So we saw some reduction in that first project that we just talked about, but don't have good data on our treatment. And I don't want to send anybody on a wild goose chase. I do, because when you bid it, the number will be the number, but I do think it'd be worth somebody's time to kind of take a look at something that's been bid out the last X number of days, just to see. I get a sense that things, like you mentioned, I get a sense that things are softening. Finally, thankfully.
As they get further in design, like the different percent, more refined design assessments will come with that, and you get a more refined cost estimate than like right now, when we study with HDR for long term, those are a high level class, pretty broad range. So as they get further in design, I would expect that those costs to be more dialed in and more a reflection if they're seeing changes in the market.
Thank you.
Ted, could you just remind us the impact of lawn watering? You mentioned that during the tour, but that's.
Yeah, Our average day production for, and I'm gonna speak just for the one model, so we provide clean up there, and this doesn't effectively include what Verizon is doing in West Des Moines, but our average day production is 55 million gallons. And on a peak day, in the summer when it's hot, we can produce over 90. So up to 95. So there's 40 million gallons per day of difference, almost twice as much. And of that 40 million, 20 to 30 million of that is likely going on lawns or lawn watering across the country. Some of it is splash pads and outdoor recreation. Some of it is evaporative cooling. But the big driver, and we know this because when it rains, even if it stays hot, if it's sunny, but if it rains, demand drops dramatically on those days. So 30 million, yeah, 30 million gallons on the grass on a hot day. And when you think in terms of Saylorville expansion, it's 10 million. That's $160 million, and 3 times that much is going on the grass on a hot summer day. That's 450 million. I can't do the math that fast, but it's $500 million worth of investment in today's dollars to water the grass. It's big, and that's Diane's point.
I'll follow up with just one other thing. I think we need to look at multiple strategies. For example, some communities have focused on healthy soils, so that you soil is healthy, you don't have to water them, right? And there's been pushback in past legislative sessions being successful with that. So I think we need to look at multiple avenues.
And that even helps with flooding.
Absolutely.
The storm sewer and all of this. There's so many benefits. You're right.
Well, I'm the choir is here.
And just for clarification, the dollars that you're talking about include the distribution mains that get the water around the metro, right?
That was, yes, that was included in the Sailor Oil, part of the Sailor Record, included transmission main.
Yeah, and all of those alternative ones, 1 and 2. That's the.
Oh, the dollar amounts on those, it did have some of that in there, but there was some other improvements that had to be made to the system as well. So those are very preliminary numbers, so I caution on those preliminary numbers that were shared, that yes, that was the intent, and there's other improvements that have to be made in the system also regardless to support the other parts of the growth in the communities.
Thank you. Very good presentation. Any further questions about the technical committee report? Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate that. Long range and capital improvement committee report, not really a report, but their members have been appointed, and that was the last page of the packet reflecting the members. Someone that meeting will be scheduled. So,
Yeah, and I would suggest that we're still firming up some of these appointments. For the technical committee, we brought that to the board to, we call it affirming the committee, and so I suspect that we would look to do that next.
okay. Finance and audit. Anything else, Scott?
Just a couple of quick things. First, my apologies for being late. As Jody mentioned, we'll have the chair. Thank you, committee members. The staff working on the scope of work with PFM, we're going to review our next committee meeting, which is set for July 8th at 3 p.m. At the West Des Moines Waterworks boardroom. We're also talking about a bunch of topics we'll be taking up, including preliminary rate setting, showing how the accounting will be handled for CIWW, and the staff will be presenting a draft capital improvement plan for producers and options and recommendations for accounting services and billing processes. And in the short interim, at least, we're going to meet monthly until operational and make a decision on how often we meet after that. And these are the bullet points that Christina gave me when I listened.
The extent of our current agenda. Any other business that the group would like to talk to me through? Hearing and seeing none, we're adjourned at 1:03. Thank you, Bill.
I don't,